we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
The thinking atheist. It's not a person. It's a symbol. An idea.
The population of atheists in this country is going through the roof.
Rejecting faith. Pursuing knowledge. Challenging the sacred.
If I tell the truth, it's because I tell the truth. Not because I put my hand on a book and made a wish.
And working together for a more rational world.
Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way.
Assume nothing. Question everything. And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Podcast. Hosted by Seth Andrews.
So I'm in the kitchen, and I'm whipping up some bibimbap. You don't know what bibimbap is? It's delicious. It's one of my favorite dishes. It's like a Korean meal, and we have it a couple of times a month. And if you haven't tried it, you really need to. It's easy to make. It's like steamed rice in the bottom, and there's some seasoned meat in it, and some chopped up mushrooms and shaved carrots and chopped zucchini half moons in it. And there's a sauce that goes on it. It's delicious. It's delicious. I'm making bibimbap, okay? And while I'm making the bibimbap, I'm streaming. I got my phone hooked up to the Echo speaker there in the kitchen, and I'm listening to the Great Courses Plus. Specifically, I'm listening to this lecture on dieting, not because I'm dieting, but I'm trying to eat better. Dr. Stephen Novella is on my speaker in the kitchen, and he's filling my brain with knowledge. And he's talking about stuff like vitamins and vitamin myths, what we think we know about vitamins. What's an antioxidant? What is that? And why do I need that? Is an all-natural food automatically better for you? I learned a few things there. The non-science surrounding homeopathy and magnets and microwaves. I know somebody who will not microwave their food because they're afraid of getting cancer. I mean, there's no science behind this. But Dr. Stephen Novella addresses this kind of stuff in the Great Courses Plus lecture series called Medical Myths, Lies, and Half-Truths. What we think we know may be hurting us. And it's pretty amazing to be able to stream lectures like this one from the Great Courses Plus while I'm doing other stuff. I'm doing household chores, I'm driving, I'm walking the airport. The Great Courses Plus is an online streaming service that has in-depth and reliable information on a huge variety of topics, thousands of lectures to explore, and you can learn about whatever interests you. History, human behavior, brain science, music, so much more. I love the Great Courses Plus. I'm so glad they're a supporter of this broadcast, and I think you're going to love them too. So as one of my listeners, you can sample it for free with unlimited access to learn about anything. Start your free trial now. Just go to thegreatcoursesplus.com/Seth. Remember, thegreatcoursesplus.com/Seth. Next Tuesday, our broadcast is going to deal with faith healers, specifically the failure of faith healing, with stories from people who have been sort of under the hand of the faith healer and came away and wanted to share what had happened to them. I'm also going to talk to a guy who went to exorcist Bob Larson's service. You've seen the Bob Larson videos on YouTube, right? He's got these people who are like growling like animals and come out, demon. And they're like, blah, blah. No, come out. I command you. And it's just the stuff of parody, but he's playing it real. He's playing it for real. And I'm going to talk to a guy who was a total poser who went in and acted like he was infected with a demon and got it on video. So he's an atheist. He doesn't believe in demons, but he went in there and he came out and he's got a story. He's going to talk about this ridiculous experience with Bob Larson. That's going to be wildly entertaining. It's coming up next Tuesday, okay? All right, let's get underway with today's conversation. This is one I've been looking forward to for a while. So we talk to actor and humanist John Lancie. His stage, film, and television credits go back to like 1975. He's been on everything. Of course, we probably best know him as Q from Star Trek The Next Generation. Just a quick smattering of some of the stuff he's done over the past 45 years. Starting back in the 70s and kind of moving forward, he had parts in television series like Police Story, The $6 Million Man, Battlestar Galactica, Emergency. miniseries like The Thornbirds. He was in MacGyver. He had a part in the television series L.A. Law. He was featured in the Terry Gilliam masterpiece, the film called The Fisher King. He was also in a movie called The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Of course, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, the Star Trek franchise. From 2001 to 2002, he played Colonel Frank Simmons on Stargate SG-1. He's been featured on Judging Amy, played Dr. Egan. Of course, he had a pivotal role in Breaking Bad. We're going to talk about that. He does a lot of acting for video games and some great ones, too. Interstate 76, Assassin's Creed, StarCraft 2, Nova Covert Ops, World of Warcraft, Legion. Way too many credits to fully mention here, but the guy has been around. And lately, he has been a pretty vocal proponent of humanism, speaking out against anti-science and speaking in support of science, reason, evidence, rationality in this often crazy world. And he joins me for a conversation today. John Lancie, it's a pleasure to have you back. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Pleasure's mine.
We spoke a couple of years ago, and of course we talked about the usual stuff. I'm sure somebody who does as many interviews as you do, you hear the same types of questions. I'm going to try to steer clear of a lot of that, John. What was your motivation? But, I want to talk a little show business. I want to talk a little bit about your craft. I want to talk about your long and pretty amazing career. But I also want to talk about the humanist in you and just life stuff, the stuff that everyday people are dealing with all the time. I first, though, must speak about adventures you're having. Is it on the Pacific Ocean? Is that correct?
Oh, yes. A couple of years ago, I took a trip. I have a sailboat, and I went from Ventura, California to the Marquesas, which is south of the equator, and the Tuamotus, and then ended up in the Society Islands, which include Tahiti and Raiatea and places like that. And then parked the boat, and then came back a year later, or less than that, 8 months or so later, after hurricane season, and then brought it back up with a young man who had actually never sailed before. And we had some adventures. So that was a long trip, arduous trip back to Ventura.
I've been watching, though, this sort of, do you call them diaries, journal entries from the Nepenthe?
Well, you know what? I've had so many people ask me about it, and, I have to say, I've never read them after I wrote them, just like I never watch any of the stuff that I've done and I watch it to see that I'm, not horrible, or if I am horrible, how am I going to fix it the next time? But my friends and acquaintances have said, you really need to put it out there. So one of my sons said, look, Dad, if I help you put it, get it organized and get it up onto the website and what have you, would you at least take a look at them and bless them? And I said, yes, sure. So he has begun the process, and I'm getting more and more people are going, oh, wow, that was a great trip. So I'm glad that they're enjoying it.
Tell me about the vessel itself. A large boat, a small boat, sailboat?
No, it's not a large boat. It's 43 foot. It's a Hans Christian, built in 1980. It's a classic sailboat, a ketch, tan-bark sails, and I refitted it and got it ready for this trip, which I had imagined all my life that I would do. I used to go to sleep at night by sort of going through all of the different things that I would, have to put on a boat, and I had been doing that for 20, 30 years. So it was one of those bucket list adventures that I knew that if I didn't do it, I would regret it. And there's sort of a window for that type of thing. It does take a fair amount of energy. And I just thought, there's a window and I've got to jump into it.
I always tell people I'm becoming more of a settler and less of a pioneer with every passing year.
Yeah, well, I think that happens. And oftentimes, if you look at the people who are actually living long and what have you, they sort of continue being, what'd you say, frontier
pioneers, adventurers.
They continue be, yeah. And I too, of late, have been going, wow, man, I'm sitting around a lot. Now I'm sitting around a lot, writing, doing stuff like that, but not doing quite what I was doing before. And It's funny you should bring that up because I said that to my wife this morning. I said, we're getting a little too sedentary.
Does she worry about you when you're off on this adventure and your safety and there's a big storm going to be coming, forecast, those types of things? Or
well, I would imagine that she worries. I don't try to send back stuff like those because, oh my God, you can't believe what's just happened. I'll get back in touch with you tomorrow. I don't send that type of stuff out. And also, we have an agreement, and that is absolutely no bad news, certainly about the children or anything like that, because there's nothing you can do about it. And so all that would do would be to create tremendous worry and anxiety and frustration. One of the things in which you discover on these long trips, one of them was like 50 days, 52 days, is that no matter how you feel and what you want, you are frankly not going to go much faster than about 6 miles an hour, no matter what. That's the way it goes. It isn't like a road trip where you just go, well, I'll just drive a little. I'll drive later into the night and I'll get there. Or I'll drive faster and I'll get there. No, there's none of that.
Have you ever been through it, like the 30-foot waves, the big storm? Have you ever felt very alone in the middle of a crisis on the water?
We had 2 instances where we had some equipment failure, and it was a very anxiety-producing. And the problem is that it lasts for days. People would ask me, my friends, I'd say, especially my acting friends, I said, hey, we all know how it feels to have an opening night where you're not quite as prepared as you would like to be. And, there's a lot on the table here, and your heart is sort of up in your throat. Well, imagine that for 4 or 5 days. So we had one experience like that and 3 other experiences, but we took care of it. We just took care of it. But listen, there are people who sail in very, very dangerous waters. And generally, if you sail these sort of milk run routes during the in the middle of the period that you are supposed to be there, the weather, it can get a little like that, but it's never going to get at the survival level. And I have not experienced that, no.
You feel the need to get away? I mean, is this a way to unplug from all the insanity in the world? Is there any of that going on?
Yes. I mean, I travel a lot. I have to say that with one's, phone, doesn't matter where you are, you can be reading the news. And we are big news junkies, and we know what's going on. And there are times that I will say to my wife or just say to myself, gotta stop, just gotta stop. Just not, we can't be on this as much as we are because it's, I don't think it's healthy, frankly, after a while.
Is balance hard for you? I mean, are you one of those all-in kind of people?
Yes, I'm a project person. So one of my sons who works for a large company called the U.S. government said, Dad, we came out of we grew up and, you and Mom are project people, and you just can't have that type of 24/7 when you work like I do now. You have to learn how to stop. But we are definitely project people. I'm working on a project now that I know that I thought I was going to be able to get at it a month ago. Something came up, and now I am working simply. I get up, I have something to eat, I sit down at my desk, and I start writing. And I have to write this play in the next 2 weeks. So,
is it something you can talk about, or is it all under wraps right now?
Sure, it is about the subject which I find to be really fascinating. I'm going to give you the long version of it, and that is, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I went on the road with the trial transcripts of the Scopes Monkey trial, and Ed Asner played William Jennings Bryan, and I played Darrow. And we went around the country And, I thought at the time it was sort of I recognize that this was sort of a marquee trial. Not sort of. It is a marquee trial, and evolution is, kind of, in that kind of controversial area. But I had no idea. I simply had no idea how current it is and how I was going to get caught up in the whole issue. And so I had a number of experiences when I spoke in colleges and spoke to people, and then mostly a lot of after the show, we would have a talk back, which is where the audience gets to ask questions and we get to respond and what have you. And it really set me off on this whole issue of how religion is still involved in, or very much involved in, science courses, which is to me, that's where the rubber meets the road. I kind of am of the opinion, look, you can believe anything you want, but the minute you bring it into the public square, you cannot simply hide behind "I believe" and then go, and I believe, and now you can't ask me any questions. And in the process of getting really familiar with that subject, I also discovered about the Dover Intelligent Design trial that took place in 2005. And so I'm writing right now kind of an introductory piece on that, because I have to go so quickly. And then when I perform that, I will probably keep a little bit of it, but mostly throw it all out, and then sit down and write a real artistic piece on it.
It is kind of weird, isn't it, in the year 2019 to be talking about things like the inclusion of Moses in social studies programs in the state of Texas. How does this happen, right? I mean, I would have thought we were well past it.
I agree. I mean, I did not grow up as somebody who was religious, so it was not something, I did not have that experience that a lot of people have, where, especially in fundamentalist families, where they, at 25, they all of a sudden go, oh my gosh, I feel like I've been lied to all my life. I did not have that experience. I was lucky to the extent that when I went to a religious private school, but it was not, it was not really religious. It was one of the best private schools in Philadelphia. And I guess there was like a Sunday kind of service or Sunday school type thing. I mean, I'm very young at this point. I mean, I'm 6 years old, let's say, or 7 years old. And I just remember going, Jonah lived in a whale? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. How do you live in a whale? And so I was already skeptical. And then I associated that with another experience that I had, which was a Cub Scout meeting. And my folks were European, and so, well, at least whether they're European or not probably doesn't make any difference. But in any case, donuts was simply not something that we ate at our house. And there was this plate of donuts. And I remember going, oh, my God, a donut. I went to a grave and I was told, hey, we pray first. No praying, no donut. And I remember that so distinctly. And I made the association of, I'm being manipulated here. So I had these two things that happened to me very early on. Although, understand something, I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by our need. I had an experience, an unhappy experience, just about a month ago. A friend of ours passed away, young man, 58 years old. And his wife was over to our house for dinner, and she said that her son had said to her, 22-year-old, their son had said, I wish that in a way I had not grown up as an atheist in the family, because I would really love to think that I was going to see Dad again in heaven. And I was terribly touched by that. And I understand that. I understand that need. And I don't believe it, but I understand it. So my antipathy towards all of this has not been on like, oh, no, you can't believe it. But mine is much more specific, and that is that, hey, guys, it's a story, wonderful story, origin story. Every culture had it, written 3,000 years ago by human beings. But in the last 3,000 years, we've learned a great deal more. And certainly in the last 500 years, since, Bishop Usher and what have you, we've learned a lot more. And we have marvelous stories to tell. And just stay out of the science room, because my concern is that I had a girl who said I was in a classroom in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, and I was there to talk to. This was during the Scopes thing. We had to talk in colleges. I think one of the deals was that Ed would talk in one college, and then I'd talk in the other, and there were 100 kids, supposedly people who were interested in acting, and they were asking questions. And at the end, the teacher said to the group, he said, I saw the show last night, and you really should go and see it. How many of you had seen the show? And, like 3 of them had raised their hands. You can kind of go, well, okay. And he said, but I saw it, and I really recommend it. And I said to the class, I said, well, thank you. Please do come and see the show, and thank you very much. I'm turning to leave, and the professor said, and he gave me that kind of look, which is, watch this. And he said, by the way, with a show of hands, how many of you believe that the world was created 4004 BC at 10 o'clock in the morning on October 23rd? And about 80 kids raised their hands. And I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. The first thing that I thought of was 500 years of finding things out had simply left the room. Curiosity had left the room. And it made me sad. It made me sad to the extent that I'm somebody who wakes up every morning, and I've done it all my life, whether it was the newspaper in the morning or the radio or now, the Google News, whatever it is. The first thing I look at is, what did we learn today, science-wise? What did we learn today? Well, we just touched onto an asteroid. Oh my God, isn't that amazing? And we're going to, whatever it is, to take a basket down, and it's going to get dust, and then the dust. Isn't that amazing? And I saw all of that go out of the window. And that night, when we were getting ready to do the show, I told the cast, I said, I had this experience. I'm still reeling from it. And I turned to one of the girls from the college who was there, and who had been there the night before. She was helping, whatever. She was sort of a theater person who was helping us. And I said, whatever her name was, Alice. I said, Alice, would you have raised your hand? And she said, oh, yes. And I said, really? Why? She said, well, because God is my bus driver. I said, Alice, I don't know what that means. It means that I can get on my bus and go to the back of the bus and party hardy because I know that God is driving my bus. And again, I was reeling in terms of my sense of that is such an abdication of one's own personal responsibility about everything. Oh my God. I was just like in free fall. And that's when I began to say, the little bit that I get to talk to a lot of people because of Star Trek or whatever, other shows that I've done, I'm going to try to address this issue. I'm going to try to talk about this issue.
We had spoken a few minutes ago. You were mentioning the scenario involving a grieving parent or a grieving child and anticipation. This is a note that I had. I wanted to talk about it. There's no totally smooth segue into the role of Donald Margolis from Breaking Bad, but I want to talk about playing Jane's father. This is an interesting role that you had because Breaking Bad being probably my favorite TV show ever. And you have, this one part, this sort of punctuation mark here in this one storyline. And it left such an impact. And I think for me, I wanted to sort of roll this by you and you tell me if I'm overthinking it. But with that character, it seemed like you had done so much with restraint. I mean, you're essentially with your eyes and the faintest of gestures, with this economy of movement, with the gravitas in your voice, you are telling the story of your hopes and fears for your daughter and the heartbreak of losing her. And I wanted to kind of go down that road and talk about the making of and the playing of the character of Donald in Breaking Bad.
Well, before I get into just the technique of what the obstacles were and what have you, let me tell you something about that, which I've always found to be just wonderful in what it is that theater, I'm calling this theater storytelling, can do. And that is that I've had now 3 or 4 times almost identical conversations with 3 or 4 people who have come up to me just, at an airport or convention somewhere or on the street. And it's always the same. It's a guy who is maybe about 24 or 5 years old, looks like they've already been living really hard, and will look at me kind of askance, not directly in the eye, kind of, and they'll say, hey man, are you Jane's father? Did you play Jane's father? I go, yeah. And then they'll say, yeah, well, now I know what my parents went through. And I just thought, oh, wow. This kid who, who knows when he became a drug addict, had been told by his parents and his teachers and, a million other people, or a ton of other people, probably also the police and the rehab people and on and on and on. You can't do this. You got to stop. Had not really gotten it. But in watching the pain, watching on a show, a theater piece, something imaginary, had the pain of that I was portraying had gotten through to him. And I've always gone, that's why I'm in this business. Every once in a while, you can touch somebody like that.
So how do you tap into that? I mean, are you drawing on a tragedy in your own life?
Well, what you tap into is that, first of all, you have to stay out of your own way. That's one. The other thing is that the desire to act can be sort of overwhelming, and what you have to do is you have to say, listen, I just need to stay out of the way. John needs to stay out of the way, because the writing is so good that the story is being told, and I don't need to tell the story. I need to be in the story. As opposed to, and I'll use another example. Let's say you're on the stage and one needs to make sure that the people in the back row understand the story and understand your journey through the story, the character's journey through the story. So you have to sort of project. In film, it's very different. I don't need to project. I just need to get out of the way so that the camera can come in and look. So most of the time, I'm just thinking. That's all. I'm just thinking. And again, it was really good. I forget, I think it was in 3 episodes. They were really well written and really well directed. And just on the set sort of story about that. And that is that when you walk on a set, you know what's going on pretty quickly and what have you. And I've been on a few sets that this is a special show, West Wing and actually Star Trek was one of those things. And certainly Breaking Bad, you walked on the set and you went, everybody is at the top of their game here. And usually, certainly in television, if you have a 2 or 3 page scene, you can expect that will take maybe about 4 hours or so. And you are usually afforded 1 or 2 takes, but surely by the 3rd take, well, first of all, on the first take, you want to be spot on. And if they're still it's still saying, okay, well, let's do another take, and then let's do a 3rd take, and you have been, in fact, at least all the words have come out, and they want to do a third take, you begin going, maybe they don't like what I'm doing. And so I remember saying that. I go, is everything okay? Oh, yeah. Well, what was very different about that show is that when we took a break for a second while they were changing the cameras around and what have you, I looked over at the video, what we call the video village. And it wasn't just the DP and the director. It was the writer and the showrunner and the executive and what have you. And I realized, oh, they're working too. They're not just collecting like on some shows. Did he say all his words? Yeah. All right. Did we get the shot? Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. It wasn't that. They were creating as well. And once that became evident to me, I, as an actor, could relax, which is always what the issue is in these type of environments, especially if you are simply a guest star. Everybody is new and everything is new and what have you. So relaxing is paramount in terms of being able to do one's work.
Is there ever been a time in recent memory? I mean, you don't even have to answer this if you don't want, but have you ever had to compensate for the material? Like, I'm going to have to interpret this in a way that elevates what I am being asked to do. Has that ever happened to you?
Well, yeah, it happens all the time. I mean, amongst actors, we always say, well, our job is to turn shit into shine holes. I mean, and there are scenes that, it's only because I've been asked about them over the years where I go, well, you know what? And you go, look, you lay down a little bit of a smoke screen to get people off the fact that the scene itself is really bumpy, but you do a little something over here and a little, like a little shiny object over here for the audience, and one gets past the scene. Sure. But in this show, it was spot on. So what you want to do is to really stay in it. And so there was no smoke and mirrors on any of it. It was just, can I just relax and stay out of my own way and let the camera do what it's supposed to do?
You got your start on daytime, is that right?
I did. I went to a drama school, and then I went into the theater. And then out of that, I got a contract. I was at Stratford in Connecticut, and then I got a contract to go to Los Angeles. And I was a contract player. I didn't really know, frankly, what I wanted to do, all I saw around me were people who were having a very, very difficult time, actors who were having a very difficult time making ends meet. And I did not think of myself as being particularly talented about any of this stuff. So I was desperate not to fail. That was one thing. And so the issue was getting a job. You have to get a job. And for actors, we don't work very much. I mean, the irony for an actor is that many actors, knew that they wanted to be actors by the age of 14. But a lot of the population doesn't know what they want to do at 14, much less at 40. They just didn't have a passion in life, which is unfortunate. So in any case, I got a call. I didn't audition or anything else. I got a call from the saying, we want to offer you 5 days on this show, Days of Our Lives. I had never watched Days of Our Lives ever. I'd never watched a soap opera. As far as I was concerned, especially from the drama school, soap operas and porn were kind of all in the same boat. I mean, it was just like, oh my God, we don't do that type of stuff. We only do Shakespeare. But I needed a job. And a lot of actors identified their careers by what they didn't do. And so they didn't do very much. And I just went, oh, you know what? They're asking me. And the answer is yes, and what have you. So I got sent the material and I looked at the show and I went, oh, what they want is a psychopath. That's who I'm supposed to play. I'm a psychopath. But what this show desperately needs is a comedian, because everything's sort of really slow and not very much fun. So I went on, and I figured I only have 5 days on it. I mean, what are they going to do? And I played fully a psychopath, but with a great sense of humor. And as I walked out after that, on the 5th day, on the Friday, to my car to forever never, be on this show again, 2 of the producers came out and they said, we're bringing you back. You have to come back. And I go, well, I don't know how that's possible. I'm a rapist. And they went, oh, don't worry about that. It's a soap opera. We'll clean you up. And it became, I did that for 3 years, and it was the most fun job I have ever had.
You like the anti-hero thing. Like, I have to bring Q up, right? I mean, he's the antagonist, sort of. But is that just your preference? You like to sort of throw the wink in with those types of people to keep it interesting?
Probably the answer is yes. The other thing is that just from an acting point of view, it doesn't really serve you to play a villain as a villain. I've always played villains as the hero. It perhaps is simply a temperamental thing or a subtlety but I just don't play them that way. So as far as I'm concerned, Q is not, as from a writing point of view, villain is always there to make the hero look more heroic. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm the hero.
Well, and you provide a mirror. You're the mirror that the hero gets to look into. I mean, you're saying all the things that nobody wants to talk about,
sure,
right?
Sure. With Star Trek, it was the same thing. I came in to do one job, which was the first job. And then, or the first episode, and that was supposed to be it. That was the end of it. So I've had a career of sort of ass backing my way into things.
Do you still audition, or do you have this sort of career inertia after all these decades?
It's really after my sailboat trip. I knew that by taking my sailboat trip at the age of 66 or so, that I was very likely, after a 2-year hiatus, going to come back to not much. You just can't go away for that type of time. And that's, in fact, what I did. I came back to not much. And then I began thinking about it, and I go, you know what? I really don't enjoy auditioning. And frankly, most of the shows in which I audition for, I don't really care whether I'm in them or not. And so am I going to really, work hard to resurrect something or make it, I just don't need it. I'm not that interested. If a good project comes around, then the answer is sure. I did a marvelous play exactly a year ago in Washington, D.C., a John Robin Bates play called Vicuña, where I play essentially Trump 2.0. Brilliantly written. Wonderfully directed by Bob Egan, who used to be at the Taper, and it was a big deal for me. I really committed to it, and it all worked out. It wasn't easy, and I can't even say it was fun, but it was certainly a challenge. And I got a call a couple months or so ago saying from a guy in Amsterdam, I'm writing a rock opera, and I'd like to write it. I'd like to do it around you. My agent said, no. He wants you to commit to it now. I said, well, what's the problem? Well, John, there are a lot of things. Who knows what will happen September of next year? I remember saying, how many rock operas are being offered to 70-year-olds? What am I waiting for, like a better rock opera or another one to pick from? Come on, let's go for it.
So a lot of, do I call it humanist activism, John? Some of the stuff that you're getting into, you're interviewed in the Humanists. You are appearing at the Reason Rally.
I just finished a thing for the Freedom from Religion Foundation up in San Francisco. It was really a marvelous convention. Super, terrific presentation.
Did you speak?
I spoke.
About?
I spoke about lying. If you want to know what has me really upset these days is just the lying that's going on. I just
Are we back to Trump 2.0 here? I mean, you brought him up. So.
Yeah. I remember watching the early debates, yes. And I remember turning to my wife when we were watching. I went, my God, he's lying, but he's lying like right in front of me. He just said he didn't say something, which I just heard him say. I was really struck by that. And I'd like to say that I was struck really early on, and I have been just whipsawed with it. And so my speech was about lying and how corrosive it is.
The storyteller then, whether it's in film, whether it's on stage for a play, whatever, you see utility in using the storyteller in that context to help course correct the culture. What you're doing with the Clarence Darrow portrayal, with the play you're writing, do you see that as your contribution to trying to promote a culture of reason?
Yes. I mean, the speech in which I gave was prompted by a lawyer who I was having dinner with, and the lawyer made the comment to me that, if I ever got you on the stand, I could destroy your credibility with the audience, because actors are by their very nature liars. And I went, what? He said, well, that's what you guys do. You lie. I said, no, you completely don't understand what it is that we do, or what the whole process, first of all, what the process is of acting, and then what the intent is. If the intent is to, present a mirror up to nature, you have to understand is that the process, when we get down in the room there, what we are looking for is not lies. We cannot act. You cannot literally act a deception. You can be in a scene where the audience is looking at somebody who is deceiving. That's what the character is doing. They're deceiving. But the actor who plays it is not in the process of deceiving. They're actually looking for the truth. And the truth of this character is that they're a liar. Yes. But that doesn't make the actor a liar. That isn't the mechanism that we use. It's just completely different. And the other thing is that, as opposed to many other professions, not the least of which is the lawyer's profession, is that we bring people into a room. There's a permission that's given. We enter an imaginary world, and the audience knows that they're entering an imaginary world. So there's no deception that's going on. The only thing that's real that happens, I'm going back to a play. The only thing that's real that happens in a play is the emotion that each audience member feels. That is real, but there's no deception. So in any case, when I am now, working today in the next 2 weeks on this Dover intelligent design thing, what is extraordinary about this trial is how the religious fundamentalist Christians simply lied to the point in which the judge, in the middle of the trial, goes, Mr. Von Fell, Mr. Buckingham, you are lying. This is perjury. This is a federal court. I could have you on contempt, and which at the end of the trial, he actually put the people up on contempt. Just the whole process of lying is, to me, has so invaded our culture. And I have to say that Fox News, 22 years ago, you begin going, oh my gosh, and the amount of people who watch it, and then you get into deceptions, the whole thing of deception. There was a very interesting documentary I just watched on it's not counterintelligence, but deception. And I have to say that halfway through it, I began going, you know what? I don't know who to believe anymore. And that's a really dangerous place to be. And as a country, we are. And it goes back to that young lady who said, well, God is my bus driver. And I go, oh, my God. She is so vulnerable to anyone who comes around. And I think that part of that has, at least in the area that I am in, this lack of critical thinking perhaps is encouraged by the religious upbringing that they go through, but these people vote. So.
Well, I think it's amazing that you are using your melodious voice, your energies, your focus to help make a more rational world out there. I think using your gifts and as a storyteller has great merit. And I think that's just amazing. And I wish you all the best in your endeavors. Any final thoughts as we close it up about the new year and, you know, the opportunities and challenges before us?
Well, I tell you, we're going to have a lot of challenges before us. Hopefully, we're going to know how to be able to take some of those and turn them into opportunities. That's for sure. I think it's really important what you are doing. I think it's really important what many people are trying to do. All of these things are really important. And I believe that the pendulum is going to swing back to all of this, and we're going to get back into a more rational world. But but we've got so many issues that are dependent on us being able to think clearly. And in my little raindrop here that I can contribute, I'm hoping that I don't really, I'm mostly interested in kids because I always have that 8-year-old kid in front of me, and that's the person who I'm mostly interested in. If I can just get to them and start saying, yeah, what about this? And I'm going to ask questions about that and stuff like that. I think that that's probably the most healthy thing that we can do right now, or at least I can do.
One day at a time, one step at a time.
You got it.
John de Lancie, it's been a real pleasure, my friend. I really enjoyed the conversation. I know our listeners did as well. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter for a complete archive of podcasts and videos, products like mugs and t-shirts featuring the Thinking Atheist logo, links to atheist pages and resources, and details on upcoming free thought events and conventions. Log on to our website, thethinkingatheist.com.